post-MSI patch. This one will bring a lot more changes in comparison to the MSI one, and Yunara will also be released. So jumping into the changes, we will begin with Azir, with his early game being buffed by 25 HP, and also his W going up by 5% AP. So this will make solo queue Azir better, and also competitive. He's already being picked, but he will be even higher prio with this change, so I'm expecting Azir to really rise up there with the most picked champs for mid lane. Braum will lose 5 armor. I mean, he's one of the champions with the highest armor, the base armor in the game, so it makes a lot of sense. He's still a really good reactive pick into a lot of compositions. He's a really good neutralizer slash receptionist, so even though he loses 5 armor, which is a big chunk, it will still be an optimal response to a lot of compositions and also engage supports. Briar. So basically CC is cleansed when the missile hits. Briar is cleansed when the missile hits and is now immune to CC for 1.25 seconds. Okay, so this gives her more quality of life, essentially. Q heal will be increased. It's better for better Darius players, because if they really know how to use this, then the missing health heal will do some changes. Initially it will be 2% missing health, and then it increases it to 6, so it's +2, +4, and then +6. And they want to buff Darius, but he will still... I do believe he will still be in a similar spot to where he is currently, as a reaction. Fiora, R healing per second increase, visual bug fixes. I think this won't be procced as much as people might be looking into, because despite going from 40% into 100%, which is a huge jump, if Fiora can utilize this entirely, sure, it will be heavily reliable, and it's a huge change. But if she cannot proc it as much as I'm thinking she will, then it won't end up being a huge deal, because, well, it really depends if she can land it effectively. However, if I'm mistaken and if it lands consistently, then this is a huge buff for Fiora when it comes to sustain, of course. Fizz, W cooldown reduced at higher ranks and E AP scaling increased. So basically he's going to have 2 seconds less in W, but usually max E first. So you won't feel this until you're level 13, essentially. And yeah, it will be a good mid-game buff for Fizz, considering that his E will also receive +5% AP. So I would say that early game Fizz will be as it is, and I don't think early game Fizz is the problem. I think mid-game transition Fizz is the biggest target that Riot is looking into. Will this be enough? I mean, 2 seconds cut from his W is nice, considering it also builds a lot of CDR. Let's see how 5% AP helps out as well. I think these are good Fizz buffs, maybe 1%, 1.5%, but the OTP players will give us more info on this one. About Kled, we will not look into all of this because it's too much information, but just to make a really quick TLDR, they're trying to salvage Kled when it comes to bug fixes with a lot of interactions, plus they're trying to shift him into an assassin, from an assassin into a bruiser type of champion. So instead of having such an identity of having run rotation of spells and trying to kill your opponent, they're trying to make him more reliable as a bruiser and have more durability. Okay, so basically his mount and unmount will have some shifts, and that is the direction that they want to take for the champion. Make sure you look into these, because these are really extensive to look into for this patch review. Lee Sin, pretty straightforward nerf, -3 AD. He has been rising a lot in popularity because of the champions that have been showing in the meta. Especially in MSI, we could see it a lot when Trundle was picked. When Bruiser junglers would be out of the picture, Lee Sin would rise a lot in popularity. So yeah, I think solo queue Lee Sin will hurt a lot, but he will still be picked in the slots. He would be picked regardless. Riven, one of the most controversial picks, will be nerfed when it comes to AD ratio now. Is this enough? Not sure if it's enough, because the bruiser build from Riven and all the bruisers is really broken, and initially she will still be a huge threat. Like when she reaches level 6, she's just a go-to button, and she can just look to make your life a nightmare, even if you're a Teemo, right? So yeah, even though they say it wasn't because of the clip, I do believe that it had some sort of impact, but Riven is one of the most broken champions, so I'm really happy that they're trying to cut her out. I really doubt this will be enough though. 10% loss eventually, sure, but the early game, you know, the snowballiness that she can get through will still be a huge issue for sure. She will get re-nerfed. Sett, basically 1% win rate drop because of armor growth. He essentially loses 9, and being a melee champion, you get more exposed. So yeah, I do think that Sett will drop a bit in win rate, even though he's still a reactive pick and not blindable currently. Twisted Fate Q damage is going to be decreased. I mean, he did show up in MSI. It was underwhelming because his win rate was 0%. He didn't win a single game, but I do believe that it's due to the fact that teams didn't really execute it well. And it's too specific of a champion because you need a lot of coordination within the team, and it's too specific and niche, and I don't really see him being a B1 option. So for solo queue, it will be a bit of a hit. I do believe that it will still appear in competitive in some angles, but not in early stages or as a priority unless the team is really well coordinated together. Yeah, so basically they're nerfing him because of the Borg changes. They won't touch Yone, but they will touch Yasuo. Maybe they are afraid that he can get too strong in comparison to Yone, so they're dropping 0.5 AD. But it will be compensated because of the Borg buffs that we will see in a bit as well. Yuumi, I'm not sure why they're touching Yuumi. Really not sure why. Ziggs, one of the biggest winners of the patch. Apologies. One of the biggest winners of the patch for sure because he loses 5 flat value initially. Even though you spam Q, you don't really care because you go from 65% AP to 80% AP. This is a buff for mid lane Ziggs, bot lane Ziggs, and hear me out, even top lane Ziggs in late Fearless if tank champions are out of the equation, okay? So I do believe that Ziggs will be a really strong flex pick because look at this. The damage per mine, the flat value will stay the same, but the AP percentage will now scale within its level. So it goes from 25, so you lose -5, which doesn't really matter. But when you reach level 13, you have 45% AP, which is when it starts to matter, you know? So really big buff in this regard. And also, despite losing 10% AP, it's still a buff because you get a lot more flat value. Out of this, you shift into 500, you shift into 700 in comparison to these previous values. So huge buffs to Ziggs. It will be one of the champions to look into for these upcoming patches. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Zoe. Her Q will be nerfed, so it goes into 2, a little early game nerf there. And W will also be nerfed, but they will try to compensate because, yeah, they will drop 15 early value and plus 5% AP, excuse me, to try to tune down early game prowess from Zoe. Blade of the Rune King, as we were saying, it will get buffed. 1% for melee, 1% for ranged. I think it will be a bigger buff for melee than it will be for ranged, of course. But it's a really welcome buff, and I was expecting it to be either this or plus 5 AD, something like this, but I really liked the shift into 9% melee, considering that a lot of the tank champions are really showing the Ornn, the Shogath, the Sion, all of the HP stackers are really popular currently, so really happy that they're going into this path. 9.5 would be huge, but maybe they shift into 9.5 in the near future, who knows. Kraken Slayer, damage ramp based on missing health, it goes into 75% and the cost goes down, so really good changes for Kraken Slayer. And PD will also get buffed, basically plus 5% attack speed. I don't think we care too much about the attack speed, but the movement speed plus 2 and giving 10% movement speed is quite a big deal. Now, crit champions will obviously want this, but I'm still not certain how much of a priority Phantom Dancer will become. I don't think it will show up as often, but if a really good Phantom Dancer user, champion, crit user, whatever, shows and can build this, the 10% movement speed will be a really good touch. A lot more than the 5% attack speed for sure. Rod of Ages. Mana will be increased by 100, mana per stack will be increased by 10, and maximum mana will be 200. So huge buffs for the champions that really want to build this item. So champions like Cassiopeia, Kassadin, Rise. You're supposed to build this item and get a lot of utility coming from the mana tools that those champions are missing, right? So having a mixture of the Zeraphs and having Rod of Ages helping out with the mana in this direction, I'm a big fan of these changes and one of the best changes I've seen this year from Riot, to be fair, because I think they whiffed a lot about they whiffed a lot around the Rod of Ages changes since the beginning of the season. I think this one definitely hits it, but I do think that Catalyst should still be nerfed because Catalyst is a really good and strong item even for champions that don't really want to build the entire Rua archetype itemization. Champions like that might need the early sustain, the early extra stats, and not shift into Rod of Ages and get quicker power spikes per se. Guardian, basically, it's going to be buffed, so it gives more AP, it gives more mana, basically, and not only flat value but also scaling values. But it's lost when it comes to bonus HP. And minimum damage threshold for trigger is now reduced, so it will be procced more often. So they want to increase the core users from the rune, which is a really good direction for Guardian. Let's see how it lands, and yeah. Unsealed Spellbook, Smite. This has been one of the most controversial as well, because in MSI we saw a lot of steals because of the supports and also in solo queue. So for me it didn't really make much sense that you could outsmite the jungler and have 1.2 after 3 swaps. Now that it goes into a maximum of 900 and it still maintains at 600 on 2, it is definitely fair, okay? It will not be as broken as before. You will still play Unsealed Spellbook because it's really in a strong state currently. However, it won't be as broken when it comes to Smite value because, yeah, you will still want to bring the Smite value, but it won't be as broken and as free as before because, yeah, supports were outsmiting a lot in the previous weeks. Bounties. Champion Bounties Dispatch were delivering a small bounty update aimed at sending off some rough edges on bounties. Bounty from farming, 1 per 20 gold, made wider by 25%. I mean, bounties have been looking horrible, to be fair. So let's see how this lands. There are a lot of really weird scenarios when it comes to bounties, so hopefully Riot sorts it out eventually. Then it's arena changes. I'm not going to look into these, so if you're curious and want to look into arena changes, go ahead. Let's do a really quick TLDR of this patch. So Azir, one of the biggest winners of the patch for sure, not only for solo queue but mainly for competitive. He will rise in popularity a lot more than he already has. He's already a prior pick for the most part. Braum loses a lot of armor, sure, but he will still be a really strong neutralizer and receiver in competitive and both solo queue as well. Briar quality of life changes, won't really change the way she is currently, also for Darius despite receiving more healing. Fiora, I'm not sure if I'm mistaken, but I don't think this value is a huge change, but I don't think she will proc it as often as I'm thinking. So I might be really mistaken. I think this is the change I'm looking for the most. Probably unsure the most, but if I'm thinking about this correctly, I don't think it will be a huge swing in win rate because she won't proc this as much. Could be mistaken though. Fizz will have cooldown reduced, and also his mid game will be a lot buffed. So I'm expecting a 1 into 1.5% win rate, maybe 2%, depends on how OTPs will ride with the pick. Kled, a lot of changes. Basically, they want to make him more bruiser instead of making him such a assassin, lethality orientation, one spell rotation of a champion. They want to make him a more bruiser, reliable pick. Let's see how it lands. A lot of changes here, and also bug fixes with the interactions. Lee Sin, pretty straightforward nerf. He has been popping off a lot in MSI, mainly because a lot of the bruisers, when they are out, Lee Sin shows a lot more as well. But when it comes to solo queue, yes, I mean it will be possibly 1% nerf for Lee Sin. Riven will still be heavily strong despite the 10% loss. I think Riven needs more nerfs, in my opinion, because the bruiser orientation when it comes to atomization is really broken. And Riven early game is not being touched for the most part. So Riven will still be in a great spot. Sett loses 1% win rate. It will be fine as a reactive pick regardless. Twisted Fate, a overwhelming pick for MSI, but mostly because teams that picked it are not coordinated and didn't really read the meta too well for TF, because I think teams were looking for early picks on TF a lot, and he should be coming later in the draft in my opinion. And he comes really early, so I'm not a big fan of how TF was really looked into at MSI, but even solo Q will be nerfed, so minus 10 damage, sure. Yasuo, they're trying to tune him down because the Borg changes will get him in a better spot. Yuumi, I don't know why. Ziggs is one of the biggest winners, if not the biggest winner of the patch. Absolute humongous changes because he loses a bit of flat value, which doesn't really matter, because he gets plus 15% AP, plus 15 AP, plus 15% AP also when it comes to his E when he reaches level 13, and also his R will be a buff. Zoe, a little bit of nerf when it comes to early game shenanigans. Bork, really nice buff, 1%. Maybe they will increase into 9.5 because the tank meta is definitely rising a lot. I think making it 6.5 for ranged and 9.5 or 10 for melees would be the way to go, but maybe it's a huge buff in that regard, but it's a huge change for Bork users for sure. Hunting guys, I forgot to talk about this, but basically champions like Rumble and Aurora will no longer be able to stack Hunting guises and go into Riftmaker, Leandris, and Bloodletter. So yeah, they will be punished for it. I really like the change. I don't think it's really healthy for the game. Kraken Slayer will get a really nice buff when it comes to value, and also Phantom Dancer, despite the current meta not really pivoting too much to Phantom Dancer users. But however, if we will see more crits, ADCs, and some champions that can really bring the Phantom Dancer value, such as Garen for example, I do believe that this 10% movement speed is huge. 5%, not that big of a deal though. Rod of Ages, really good changes for champions like Cassio, Kassadin, Rise, yada yada yada. Anivia, for example, Veigar too, and I think this is the right direction for the users that are supposed to build this item. Best Rod of Ages change of the year, and I do believe that Catalyst should be nerfed regardless. Guardian, they want to make the rune shift more into other users, so they're buffing it overall. And Unsealed Spellbook, I mean, yeah, it won't be the Smite Fiesta that it has been, so they will drop into 600 by the second swap and 900 into the third one, and never reaching 1.2. Bounties, hopefully right, does a big change because I'm not a fan of bounties currently, and I think they're really bugged in a lot of scenarios, so hopefully they can tweak that into a better and more logical state. That was it for this patch post MSI. Let's stay tuned for 25.15, but just keep a really close eye when it comes to Ziggs priority. That champion will be definitely be looked into.